because your content falls behind, maybe you become discouraged. Maybe, 1 or 2 days pass and you feel like, oh, I haven't created anything. But then maybe when you do create something, it feels like there's no engagement, so you get discouraged.
Welcome to the MediaBooks podcast, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing. Owning a virtual firm today means having a professional and modern online presence, and in this podcast, we talk about how to do just that. My name is Kristen Corey, and I'm the owner of MediaBooks, a media agency that provides creativity exclusively to accounting firms. And if you're an accounting firm owner, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the MediaBooks podcast. In this podcast episode, I'm going to be talking about how set it and forget it marketing can help you save time every day. So when it comes to marketing, a lot of us currently in 2023, we think of social media. And the thing is that social media, whenever we create content for it, whether we're talking about a post on LinkedIn, a post in our Facebook group, an Instagram story, a TikTok reel, generally these have very short shelf lives. And what do I mean when I say shelf life? So on average, how long can you expect a post to be appearing on one of your followers' feeds? Now, of course, this is going to be dictated by things like your audience, whether it's gaining traction, the sort of relationship you have with your audience, engagement, different things like that. But shelf life on average, when can we expect an average post on the website to sort of decline in how frequently it's showing up in people's feeds? And so if we look at some of the most popular social media platforms, typically on Twitter, that's going to be about 15 minutes, which is crazy. If you post something on Twitter in about 15 minutes, you're going to probably see the peak of the sort of engagement that you have with that certain post. This is also largely why we do not create content for Twitter. It's just really hard to sort of automate. It's hard to be engaged on that platform because any content you put out there has such a short shelf life. If we look at Facebook, the average shelf life is about 6 hours, which sounds like a lot more, but when compared to other social media platforms, it's really not that much. This is oftentimes why Facebook content doesn't do well. Really, it's just one of kind of many reasons why Facebook business pages, we don't really encourage those in a marketing strategy. Another platform, LinkedIn, you can expect the shelf life to be 24 to 30 hours, which is actually pretty good. However, consider how many 24 to 30 hour blocks you are hitting in a week. Now you're posting 5 times a week to just stay current. And the same thing with Instagram. 21 to 48 hours is the average shelf life. And the problem with this is it brings a number of challenges. So you have now turned yourself as a business owner into a content creator. Your content falls behind, and because your content falls behind, maybe you become discouraged. Maybe, 1 or 2 days pass and you feel like, oh, I haven't created anything. But then maybe when you do create something, it feels like there's no engagement, so you get discouraged. You spend hours creating content with results that don't feel worth it. And maybe you even decide, you know what, I'm just going to phone it in. I'm going to buy some, cheap templates I found online that aren't really specific to my brand, my messaging. And unfortunately, they don't stand out. They're not super unique, but at least I'm getting something on social media. And then we find our results become even more average. We're not really hitting any sort of goal. We're not saying anything unique. And so it becomes even more difficult to build a following. Great content can fall short even if you don't post at the right time with social media. So we're encountering all of these challenges with social media, which is normal, and of course everyone is facing it. But overall, social media is hard to begin with, and the frequency at which you need to post in order to stay relevant can become very overwhelming for business owners if you are running it by yourselves, or even if you're just a social media manager. A lot of us, we have sort of a limit at how many social media channels that we can handle at one time because it is such a demand on our day-to-day lives. You can't just post once a week You have to post multiple times, and that can be really exhausting. And so having said all that, I also want to have just a disclaimer before I get into set it and forget it marketing. While all of this is challenging, I do believe you should be on some platform. You don't need to be on all the platforms, and I definitely don't recommend starting out on all the platforms, but finding one that you are most comfortable with and your audience is most likely to be hanging out at is a great place to start, because you'll naturally find yourself gravitating towards that audience. And then you can also just make sure that you're hitting your audience at good times. You're hitting them where they're just most likely to hang out. So having said all that, social media isn't bad, but it is exhausting. And so set it and forget it marketing is definitely something that I encourage people to consider if they find that they don't have a lot of time to invest in their marketing, or they want to get, sort of a long-term return on their investment. So what is set it and forget it marketing? So as I just went through some of the popular social media channels and their average shelf life. For the purpose of this podcast episode, we're going to define set it and forget it marketing as anything that's longer than, we'll say, a week. That's a pretty, something that we can keep up with. Maybe you check in with it once a week, any sort of this marketing, versus social media where you sort of need to be involved on a daily basis. This is something that can run in the background while you work, and you don't necessarily need to be talking about your day-to-day life or posting constantly. And then when you do create a post, it has sort of this really quick turnaround. So what is the benefit of set it and forget it marketing? Typically, this is content that you can scale. So whether you have 1 client or 100 clients, this is something that you can ideally keep up with. And then 2, this is the kind of setup that you can reap marketing benefits long-term without a ton of upkeep. Of course, there are going to be things that you have to update from time to time, but we want to sort of think of this as like, where can I get the most bang for my buck when it comes to time? So I'm going to go through 4 really popular set it and forget it marketing strategies, and you can maybe find one that appeals to you. The first one is YouTube content. Now, you may be thinking, okay, isn't YouTube kind of like a social media platform? How does that help me marketing strategy-wise? The reason why I bring up YouTube content is because it has an extremely long shelf life. Now, there is a wide variance. Typically, the shelf life is anywhere from 20 days to 10 years. And the reason it's so long is for a couple reasons. One, depending on the type of content you create, if it's news-based, it's going to be generally shorter. But if you create more general content, like how to read a balance sheet, how to read an income statement, that's something that you can get a lot of return on your investment, years-wise. That generally hasn't changed in the last 10 years, it's fair to say. But if you talk about tech or apps, maybe you can get, a few months out of that, or even a year or 2. And while it has this sort of potential for long shelf life, a big reason for that is because it's not feed-based. If you think about Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, when you show up to any of these apps, there's a feed, and you're sort of scrolling through for the relatively most recent posts. YouTube isn't built that way. It's built in a different sort of platform. I would say dashboard setting. Part of the reason is it's also a search engine. So when you go to Instagram, you don't necessarily type in what you want to see. You have accounts that you follow, or there's a page where you can discover different things. And YouTube has that as well. They have subscriptions and they have pages where you can discover. But generally when you go to YouTube, it's much more common for you to type in something that you want to watch or search for versus Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. Generally, we aren't searching for things on those platforms. We aren't going to those platforms for necessarily specific information. This also plays into SEO. Google owns YouTube, and whenever you do a Google search, you will also find there are YouTube videos, typically within, the first page of results. And so you could show up more frequently on YouTube. You can also help your company's SEO when creating content on YouTube. When it comes to creating content, just kind of go over kind of some basic ideas. Basic content that you can reuse for clients or generate leads is a fantastic place to start. You can explain financial statements. You can create sort of dummy or fake ones and explain the thought process through them, explain what you're looking for if you come at it from an advisory standpoint. If you just do bookkeeping, you don't offer tax, or you don't offer advisory services, you can show just how to use tools in QuickBooks or Xero or whatever your preferred platform is. You can talk about Bill.com. You could talk about payroll. There's a ton of different ways that you can approach the content and make really short videos just on how to use the tools, or you can do really long, elaborate videos going into more depth. You can do both. There's kind of, sky's the limit when it comes to the YouTube content. And it's great because it's not just an audio platform, it's also a visual platform. And so there's a lot of flexibility with the kind of content that you can create. Conversely, with other platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, there's sort of a formula that you should follow in order to show up more frequently in the algorithm. So as I mentioned, YouTube also adds to SEO. Google owns YouTube. When people are searching for things, that means you can frequently show up in the feed, which also brings me to the second sort of set it and forget it marketing, and that is your website. Compared to your other marketing assets, and when I say marketing assets, I mean things like your social media channel, I mean like your email list, your website maintenance can be relatively low. It can be something that you build once. It takes a lot of time and energy and creativity to build a website, but once you have it set up, the maintenance can be fairly simple. SEO, same thing with that. It can be a fairly simple strategy, and really the idea here is long-term growth. SEO is not a quick way to just get a lot of clients. We are thinking long-term here. However, if you do have a long-term plan, you can find that there are a lot of really great benefits, and so it's something that if you're considering it, start doing it today. Consider it a long-term plan. Don't expect, immediate results tomorrow. But there's a couple ways that you can implement this. And the first thing is to update your website regularly. And you can do that with things like blog content. You can do things like podcast content, having new resources, finding ways to consistently update and improve and optimize your website is another great place to start. You can also just go through like a basic SEO checklist. Squarespace, if you use Squarespace, it is our preferred platform. They have a fantastic SEO checklist, which I will be sure to link in the show notes. You can go through that and just find ways to consistently improve your website over time. And the thing with SEO is that it all compounds. So the more people visit your website, the more people find it useful, the more resources you have on there, the better it is going to do for your SEO. You can also use it for various purposes. This is something that we are really honing in and talking about a lot right now, because I think there's a little bit of a misconception around your website that it is only used for lead generation or only used to tell people about your company. You can actually use it for a bunch of different resources or in a bunch of different ways. You can send clients to your website for resources. You can have client portals on your website. You can accept client payments through your website. That is a really easy way to sort of have a home base for your clients. So if they're constantly saying, hey, can you send me that payment link again? Or hey, can you send me the login details? I lost that email. If you have just a place on your website where it's a sort of reserve section, a behind the curtain section where clients can log in, it could be a really great way to improve your perceived value, simplify that sort of communication process, and give you a little bit of an SEO boost because you will have your clients frequently visiting your website. The next sort of set it and forget it marketing strategy that you could do is implement lead magnets. Now, these are also called ebooks, downloads, freebies. They go by a bunch of different names, but generally the idea is to exchange something that is more valuable than a blog post in exchange for an email address. Generally, that is what they generally refer to. So when it comes to these lead magnets, there's a ton of topics very similar to the YouTube content that you can do, where they have a lot of long-term value. So for example, tax topics are great, but generally they're only going to do well from January to April and maybe in October. But topics like how to read a balance statement, a balance sheet or an income statement, a lead magnet on accounting terminology, the basics of cash flow. Those are all really sort of high-level things that can be really appealing to someone that is trying to just learn about accounting or see, whether they need to hire an accountant. And so those are just a few titles that you can kind of use to get yourself started. Another great place to look is our lead magnet library on our website, MediaBooksAgency.com. We have a bunch of titles on there for lead magnets and a bunch of lead magnets as well, where you can kind of search through and get some inspiration. But how to market these lead magnets, you can make them a pop-up on your website. You can make them an announcement bar. Those are really easy to implement if you have Squarespace. If you just go to the marketing tab on your main page, it's a walkthrough process. And so it'll make it, you can do it in less than 5 minutes. Just really add the file, add some copy, toggle it on, and then you have a pop-up on your website. You can add it as a block, and then you can advertise that you have these lead magnets on your email campaigns, on your social media, on your YouTube channel. It's a great place to sort of, talk about maybe how to read a balance sheet income statement and be like, hey, if you want a guide so you can more, follow along, go check out this lead magnet and send people over there. And so now that you have all those sort of lead magnet assets and places to put them, you also want to create sort of a place where the email addresses can funnel towards. So setting up something like a Google Sheet through storage on your Squarespace website, or if you use a email campaign platform like Flowdesk or MailChimp, they have different forms that you can create where when anyone enters their email address, the lead magnet will be sent directly to them and it'll show up in their inbox. A bonus for when it comes to lead magnets is that it's not just great for leads, actually. You can also use this content with your clients too. So, for example, one of our lead magnets is accounting terminology, accounting terms that, you can quickly refer to and know. This can be something great to share with your clients where when you're talking, maybe they're confused or they're scared to ask you or they aren't quite sure what you meant. Having that sort of accounting terminology cheat sheet can be a great way to just give them a little bit of a boost in value. And then lastly, a great set it and forget it marketing hack here is an email sequence. This can be challenging depending on what email campaign app you are using, but it is a really easy way to sort of set something up and have a personal touch whenever anyone interacts with you on your website. So let's say someone downloads the email magnet. You can set up an email sequence using an app where, let's say Monday they download the email magnet. Wednesday, let's say they get another email just introducing your business to them. Then a week later, they get another email sort of reviewing your services. And then another week later, they get an email with even more resources that you believe will help them. And you can automate this so that you're not constantly having to send personalized emails to people over and over again. And you can set this up for, frankly, however long you want to. You could have this set up a year out so you never have to send an email campaign again. But it's a really fantastic way to add personal touches when you don't have a ton of time to send personalized email campaigns every single time someone contacts you. You can set it up with tools like Flowdesk, MailChimp, HubSpot. Unfortunately, it'll charge you an arm and a leg. They have a very interesting pricing structure when it comes to adding things like workflows. So I don't recommend HubSpot, but Flowdesk is our preferred platform when it comes to email campaigns. You can have the workflows to set this whole, automation up. You can have email campaigns. You can have forms where people can enter in those email addresses and their names. And then also in the show notes, we have 50% off for 1 year with our affiliate link through Flowdesk. So their total price is $40, but you can get $20 a month for 1 year. Highly recommend Flowdesk simply because of the ease of the pricing, and they have all the tools that you really need to just have a very simple sort of email campaign focused marketing strategy. Now, that is it for today's episode. Be sure to check out the show notes. I am going to include some links to the Squarespace SEO checklist, the lead magnet library, and then you're also going to find our Flowdesk affiliate link. But if you have any questions about any of these apps, please be sure to check out our Facebook group. We have lots of conversations on there about sort of the different tech and trying to figure out what is going to be best for your own personalized marketing strategy. Everyone likes to talk about passive income, but what about passive marketing? Specifically, lead magnets. Lead magnets are an excellent way to grow your email list. Add one to your website and watch your email list grow over time. It is set it and forget it marketing. Visit our lead magnets library where you can purchase lead magnets for everything from reading a balance sheet and income statement to sales tax 101. Add your brand colors, hit publish, watch your email list grow. Visit MediaBooksAgency.com, and under our resources tab, you will find our lead magnets library where you can get started today. MediaBooks, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing.